Joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, now retired from the U.S. Army and a senior fellow and defense expert at Defense Priorities. Lieutenant Colonel Davis, thank you for joining us. The U.S. initially said they weren't going to send Patriot missiles. Then they changed course in December, sending one battery and training Ukrainian soldiers on how to use it. The U.S. said it wasn't going to send F-16s, but now will not block the export of them from allies and will help train. Seems like we're loosening on what we're willing to do to help Ukraine. What should we make of all of this?
Well, this is just the latest in a very long list of things over the last 15 months that we initially said we weren't going to do, and then later on just kind of dribbled it out. M1 tanks are the same issue with that, Bradley fighting vehicles, howitzers, I mean, you name it. I mean, all these things are on that list. And really what this illustrates, and this latest one is just the latest example of it, is that we really don't have a strategy. We really don't know what we're trying to accomplish here, because I can just assure you that even if the Ukraine's gets a full squadron or even more of F-16s and all the pilots trained up, this is not going to create any kind of change in the dynamics of the war. It's going to help, but it's not a magic weapon. The F-16 is just as vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire from the Russian side as the MiG-29s, as the MiG-31s, and other kinds of aircraft. So this is going to help, but it's definitely not a game changer, and it just shows we really don't know what we're trying to accomplish. That's just the hard truth of it.
Yeah. $3 billion to you and I, Lieutenant Colonel, and I think we'd be doing something different with our time. But for the Pentagon, it's an accounting error. And this comes as folks are putting pressure on Washington to explain how they were going to continue supporting Ukraine. How does something like this happen? And now that we have it, where is it going?
Yeah, it's a little shady. I think you got to say, putting the best face on it, that you suddenly discover that, oh, actually, we got $3 billion more bucks to use on different weapon systems than we had before. But for an organization that has literally never been able to pass an audit, it also isn't entirely surprising. But, kind of as you pointed out, to you and I, to normal people, $3 billion is an astronomical sum. But to a war situation like this, it's not that much, and it's not going to get a whole lot different than, we've had $100 billion over the last year or so announced. The bigger problem, though, is that whether this accounting error or not, it's most of the money that we have accounted is going to run out somewhere between August and September. And then Congress is going to have some very difficult choices to make as to how much more money are they going to put forth. Because if we don't support Ukraine at the same level that we have so far, it's not entirely sure they can stand on their own. And it's also not clear that the American people are going to continue to back giving this much amount of equipment and money as that we've given in the last year into the next.
Yeah. More news out of the G7. The Treasury Department said the U.S. and other international partners are tightening sanctions on Russia to degrade their capacity to wage war against Ukraine. This is something Haley hit on earlier. Reporting from earlier this year said that sanctions aren't really working as intended. What's the thinking here? Is it a long, slow squeeze that the U.S. is looking at to get results?
This again is kind of like the question we talked about a minute ago. What's the objective? What are we trying to create? Because if you're using sanctions, the whole purpose of sanctions is to get the target country to do something that we want to. And the only way you do that is to offer threats of sanctions, and then the offer of lifting sanctions if they do something they want. That's not even on the table here. This is just some more sanctions. And the reality is that after 15 months of sanctions, and of course Russia was sanctioned quite a bit before that, they don't even hardly bat an eye at this. They don't. It doesn't really affect them that much. They're used to it. They're ready to sacrifice, and if they need to tighten their belt a little bit more, they can. But ultimately, we don't even know what we want this to accomplish beyond the general subject of, well, we want them to end the war. But how's this going to accomplish that? That's the part that's missing, is that no one says this sanction will help achieve our objective by this. That doesn't even exist. And as long as that's the case, it may look good on paper. It may make people feel good, but it's not going to have any impact on the ground, I'm afraid.
Yeah, a lot of lasting questions there. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you so much for your time. We got